Well, hello, everybody. My name is Rochelle Gleason, and I am a forensic nurse with Texas Forensic Nurse Examiners. And I am certified for adult, adolescent, and pediatric. And I've been doing forensics on and off for about 5 or 6 years. And with me, I have my wonderful advocacy manager and our counselor, Caitlin Gonzalez. And I'll let her introduce herself a little bit.
Hi. Like Rochelle said, my name is Caitlin Gonzalez. I'm the advocacy and counseling manager with the Forensic Center. And I've been working with survivors of intimate partner violence, sexual assault since about, I want to say 2016. So a couple years now. And we are here to talk to y'all about helping the helper, about burnout, compassion fatigue, and vicarious trauma. And I'm going to let Rochelle kind of talk to y'all about why we chose to talk about this today.
So, the reason that this was kind of heavy on my mind for us to talk about is in the midst of COVID, many of you have probably seen some of the patients that the acuity of the violence has increased. Not only are we dealing with our own issues of trying to manage through this pandemic, but also we're still giving of ourselves to take care of others. So I really felt that it was a great area for us to talk about, just about investing back into ourselves and for us to recognize what could be going on with ourselves if we're kind of feeling those strains of what's going on in society today. But it really is an important thing for us to focus on in this line of work that we are invested in.
So today we're going to be talking about kind of the role of the helper, what burnout looks like, what compassion fatigue looks like, what vicarious trauma looks like, and then of course, we're going to take a look into self-care and kind of define what self-care means and the different components of self-care that are really important to make sure that we're focusing on. And so the role of the helper. So what is it that we as helpers do? Well, we practice trauma-informed care. We provide crisis intervention. We provide education and trainings. We manage services and referrals. But kind of at the pillar of the services that we do is we hear the survivor's story. We hear the awful things that they experience, that they endure. And we are responsible for managing essentially resources, information, and making sure that they're being taken care of in the best of our ability. But on top of all of those services that we give or that we provide, we are also investing pieces of ourselves, right? We're investing our own time. We're investing empathy, kindness, energy, and attention. And we're drawing all of these things from our own reservoirs, right? Our own reserves, our time, our empathy, our kindness, our energy, and our attention. And we're giving it to the people that we work with, right? And so what's important to understand and recognize is that we sometimes, whenever we get overwhelmed, we get stressed, we're overworked, we sometimes forget to replenish those things that we are giving to others. And so we're pulling time, empathy, all the things. We're pulling it from something that isn't there. And that's when it can start to lead to burnout, compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, and vicarious trauma, right? So what we want everyone to do is kind of on a sheet of notebook paper or on your computers, Rochelle is going to post all of these answers, or like the never, no change, rarely, sometimes, often, and always much change in the comment box. So that way, whenever we go through the slides, you'll have a key to help you answer the survey. But on your own sheet of paper or on, like I said, on your computer, we're going to go through a burnout survey, and I want you to answer honestly. So these are your own answers. So you don't have to share in the comment box if you don't want to. If you do, that's up to you. But we're going to kind of break down the results. And then as we go through what burnout looks like, what secondary traumatic stress looks like, what vicarious trauma looks like, what all of those things look like, then we're going to address how to combat those. If you do have a higher answer or a higher rating, we're going to talk about self-care and managing managing those symptoms as we progress through the presentation today. And so we are going to ask that you hold on to your answers, but we will kind of give you the results as we finish. Okay. So the first one, on a scale of 1 to 10, or of 1 to 5, do you often, never, or very often worry at night, have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep? Do you feel less competent, effective more than before, or is work harder yet, or work harder yet accomplish less? Do you consider yourself underappreciated or used on the job? Do you feel tired, fatigued, even when you get enough sleep? Do you dread going to work or feel trapped in your work situation? So take a couple minutes and rate your answers.
And if you need the key for reference, it's in the chat. So you can just pull that up in your corner to be able to use it as your reference for the questions.
Mm-hmm. We're going to move on to the next one.
So, do you feel angry, irritated, annoyed, or disappointed in the people around you? Do you suffer from physical complaints or frequent illnesses such as headaches, coughs, body aches, heartburn, colds? Do you feel overwhelmed? Do you think that sex seems like more trouble than it's actually worth? And do you see close friends and family less often?
I'm going to take a couple of minutes or a couple seconds to answer those. Okay. Are you more forgetful or dissociated than usual? Are you always watching the clock? Avoiding conversations with coworkers or isolating in general? Rigidly applying rules without considering creative solutions? Increasing use of alcohol or drugs? Take a couple seconds.
Are we needing more time, or are we staying on, like, are we able to stay caught up? Just kind of give us some feedback here, guys. That way we're not rushing too far ahead of you, please.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So the next one.
All right. So the next one is, are you easily or automatically expressing negative attitudes, especially towards changes? Are you absent, out sick more often, or while you're at work, you're more of an absent presence? Are you unable to laugh at a joke about yourself, or have you had difficulty finding joy? Are you experiencing interpersonal conflict with your coworkers, your family, or in your interpersonal relationships? And this last one, are you too busy to do the ordinary things, such as making phone calls, making appointments, going grocery shopping, general upkeep around the house?
So we're going to take a couple seconds. Does work seem meaningless or filled with too many repetitive situations? Pay too little? Do you lack access to social professional support groups? Depend on capricious funding sources or not have enough funds to accomplish agency goals? Lack clear guidelines or require you to deal with rapid program changes?
Caitlin, let's just give a few extra moments. I'm getting a couple of people in the chat that they're trying to keep up, but just they're evaluating the question. So let's just give them a couple more minutes.
Okay. For those of you curious about the random ice cream cones on the slides, it came like pre-done on this PowerPoint presentation. And so we did not intentionally put ice cream on there, but I think we just kind of committed to the ice cream being there. So we're just weird like that and decided to put ice and just committed to having the ice cream on the page.
And personally, I think ice cream makes everything better. So if you are feeling any of those, personally, I know that I've been that person that has indulged in some ice cream to kind of make it through some of these things. So I'm going to claim it that ice cream makes it all better.
Right. Self-care.
That's right.
Okay. All right. So I think we can probably go ahead and go to the next page.
All right. So this next one, does your job entail so many different tasks that you feel fragmented or that you are pulled between many different tasks? Does your job demand coping with an angry public? We know sometimes in this job we're having to deal with parents or significant others that may place blame or may not really be coping with the situations really well. So sometimes that can be something we're having to interact with. And then the last question is, does your job overload you with work, demand long shifts and frequent overtime? Or does it deny you your breaks, your lunches, sick leave, or vacations that you're entitled to?
Just taking a couple seconds. Okay. Right. So, Rochelle.
All right. So now what we want you to do is to tally up your scores. So for all of those questions, go ahead and add up your score and write that score at the bottom of your answers. I'll give you about a minute to add up there. All right, so let's dig into what our score means. So So let's keep in mind that burnout is reversible no matter how far along we are. So whether we score 28 or whether we score 91 or above, burnout is always reversible. It's just a matter of investing into ourselves and allowing ourselves the time to recoup and to provide ourselves some self-care. So for those of you that scored 28 to 38, you are impressively mellow. So you have no job stress and you are practically burnout proof. If you feel comfortable, how about y'all let me know in the chat of who is pretty mellow there. So who falls in that 28 to 38 range? So the next one is 38 to 50. You have a low amount of job-related stress and you are not likely to burn out. I will post the link to the actual survey. And so look over the ones that you scored higher than a 3. So that way you can evaluate the ones that maybe you might need to look into a little bit more to help reduce that stress load there. So the next one is 51 to 70. Now, if you're falling in that range, you seem to be under a moderate amount of stress on your job, and you have a very fair chance of burning out. So for any of the questions that you scored a 4 or above, as we go through the presentation, be evaluating some of the stress reduction techniques to help assist you with that. And we'll dig into that a little bit more as we go forward with some of the treatment or some of the options to provide ourselves some self-care. 71 through 90. So we're kind of getting up there. So if your score's a little bit higher, you're probably, you're more at risk for burnout here. You have a high amount of job-related stress and you may have already begun to burn out. We recommend stress reduction, considering some techniques in assertiveness and burnout prevention. So any questions that you marked 4 or higher, those would be questions to go back and evaluate and see which ones bother you the most and how you can implement some stress reduction techniques to help you with that. Another thing to keep in mind for those that are in this moderate amount of stress, you may actually need to go to the doctor and get an evaluation because as your stress levels increase, more and more we start feeling some of those physical manifestations. So where we're getting more headaches, our bodies are just tired, we're sleeping more, and we're still not feeling rested. So it may be a good opportunity for you to go in and get a medical checkup to make sure that everything is okay. And then our last section, the 91 and up score, you are under a dangerous amount of stress and you are probably getting to the point of advanced stages of burnout. With some changes in your behaviors and some of your initiatives for self-care, maybe even possibly some of the demands of your job, it could actually help bring about some stress reduction and to start backing out of that level of burnout for you. So for those of you that may actually have a high score, don't let it alarm you, but you do need to pay attention to it. So we are going to dig into more about burnout, vicarious trauma, and compassion fatigue. And then we're also going to provide some options as far as investing back into yourself to help combat these things.
So what is burnout? Well, the ICD-11 defines it as a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And it's characterized by three dimensions. One is feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. So feeling too tired or not enough energy to be able to complete the work that you do or day-to-day tasks once you're out of work. Increased mental distance from one's job or feelings of negativism or cynicism related to one's job, and then reduce professional efficacy. And so sometimes this is characterized by like showing up to work very frequently, calling into work very frequently. And if you're not at work or you're getting to work at a delayed time, sometimes the job can't be done in that amount of time frame that you're there, which again, it's a vicious cycle where if you're not able to complete your task and you're going to suffer from increased stress from the task not being completed and so on and so forth. And it's, like I said, it's a vicious cycle. So we're gonna watch this video. It's one of my favorite videos on compassion fatigue and burnout and how it can lead to vicarious trauma.
What do you do when the government declares red meat unhealthy? If you're Ray Kroc, you create the chicken nugget and go on to sell over $2 billion a year. See how your favorite foods got to your plate on The Food That Built America. New episodes Memorial Day at 8, only on the History Channel.
Let's play a little game. We'll play a word association game. I'll say a word and you can picture something in your head. You can even shout it out loud. Are you ready? Cow. Okay, so most of you maybe were thinking this. Maybe a few of you were thinking more this. And maybe some of you thought this. We'll do another one, work. Awesome, so some of you really love your work, like this. Maybe a few of you were thinking this. And I wonder if anyone felt this. We'll do just one more. PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. So most of you thought this. Maybe a few of you were thinking this. But I wonder if anyone thought this. Compassion fatigue is the post-traumatic stress disorder related symptoms that you receive vicariously as a secondary target to trauma. Compassion fatigue is experienced by those in a helping profession. Doctors, nurses, counselors, therapists, police officers, and maybe even you. If your unpaid role is that of a helping professional, then you may also be affected by compassion fatigue. If you are the middle of the night phone answerer or helping a friend through addiction or anxiety, if you are raising children or caring for parents or maybe both at the same time, if your unpaid role is that of a helping profession, compassion fatigue could be affecting you as well. Now, what puts you at a greater risk for compassion fatigue is empathy. Those generally in a helping profession have a very strong empathetic response system. And empathy is that ability to pick yourself up and put yourself in someone else's shoes and get it. Really get where they're coming from. The problem with empathy is you don't get to decide when to jump out. And those traumas that they experience begin to change you. I remember when I was the supervisor of a therapeutic group home and I was sitting down with one of my clients. She began to tell me the horrific and painful stories of her past. And as she laid out in detail what she had experienced, my cell phone began to vibrate. And I wanted to show her that I was listening and I cared about every word she said. So I picked it up and I silenced it and I put it back down and I continued to listen. From that day forward, every single time I picked up my cell phone, swiped to silence it, I was transported back to her trauma. My brain had created a PTSD related symptom that transported me back to her situation every single time for years. Now, this would be pretty normal if it happened that day after work at the grocery store, or maybe even a week or 2 weeks later. But where we get concerned that maybe this trauma is starting to change you is when it's sticking around for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and maybe even longer. Now, for many years, compassion fatigue was confused. People called everything burnout until Dr. Charles Figley came around in the late 80s and 90s and began to do research. We called it burnout. But the truth is, there's a significant difference between burnout and compassion fatigue. Burnout has to do with being worn out and tired and just flat out not liking your job anymore. Compassion fatigue has to do with being afraid. Compassion fatigue begins to change your hardwiring, change who you are. We see this a lot in child protective service workers. They start to become overly vigilant, believing that everyone is out to hurt them and their family. When I think of this, I can't help but think of the nurse who came after one of my classes and said, still to this day, she can see the broken bones of the young man who was abused by his parents. That still today, she knows the smell of death from a patient who laid in bed dying. These memories, they do not just go away, and they begin to change you. But we like to make excuses because we think we're superhuman. So we say things like, I'm fine. I'm a professional. I can deal with the stress. In fact, it doesn't even stress me out. My famous talk off was, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know most people think it's stressful, but I'm okay. The problem with that is when stress and trauma start to affect you, your brain and your body, they do not pull for your opinion. And they will start to show signs and symptoms because your body and your brain are shouting at you, I am not okay. I cannot handle the trauma. In little ways, whether you start to have sleep problems, either you're sleeping all the time or not able to sleep at all. Another way it manifests is becoming a workaholic. Now, I know plenty of you in this room think, Amy, there's nothing wrong with being a workaholic. Get off my toes. Let me tell you why it may be a problem. Because when we start to feel like we are losing control of the world around us, what we do is we roll up our sleeves and we work a little harder. And I can work hard enough to make this trauma go away. Another sign and symptom is feeling unappreciated and under-resourced, like what you have is not enough to get the job done. Now, I'm not saying that's not true. There's a very good chance you are indeed underappreciated. But when you started in this helping profession, or when you started helping your friend or your family member, did you know you were going to be underappreciated, but you said, it's okay. I want to do this anyway. It's okay. I love you enough. But then somewhere along the way, that is no longer okay with me. It is no longer okay that I am not thanked and that I don't have what I need to succeed. What that tells me is your circumstances, they didn't change. You did. Maybe you changed because of life. Maybe you changed because of maturity, but maybe you changed because of compassion fatigue. And the last symptom I want to talk with you about today is called self-entitlement. And self-entitlement is a justification of negative maladaptive behaviors because of the positive things you do. The best way I can picture putting this is most of us went to school and got a degree or a certification to be professionals at what we do. But the truth is, I'll let you in on a secret, that's not enough because we're overachievers. So we require little invisible badges to really be professionals. Let me tell you what these invisible badges look like. For social workers, I know it looks like this. I stayed up all night long helping Joe Smith at the hospital. Now I'm a real social worker. For some healthcare professionals, I know it looks like this. I worked 2 shifts in a row. Now I'm a real healthcare professional. Where this turns into self-entitlement is when it looks like this. I stayed up all night helping Joe Smith at the hospital. That's why I'm a little cranky today and biting everyone's heads off. I worked 2 shifts in a row. In fact, I worked 60 hours this week, so I'm getting wasted all weekend. We begin to justify the negative behaviors because of the positive things that we do. Now that I have thoroughly depressed you, I want to give you some good news. That compassion fatigue can be identified, arrested, and treated at any time. That you can begin this journey for post-traumatic growth. That you can be better after trauma than you ever were before. And the best way I can think of putting this is when you think of an airplane, you know that the stewardess tells you where those exits are, and then they begin to tell you to please put your mask on you first before assisting other people. Now, every time I travel for vacation with my family, I show the stewardess that I'm listening. I get the cue card out of the backseat pocket and I give eye contact. I'm almost the only person on the plane listening. And I show if the plane went down, I could save the plane. I'm real intense about it. And yet it never fails. Every time they finish, they come over to me and they say, "Excuse me, if there were a change in cabin pressure, what would you do?" And I'm a little offended. I don't know why they asked me that. But you see, that flight attendant, they see something you don't. They see the carry-ons that I travel with. They see this. They do see me, and they see this. You see, that flight attendant knows that no matter how much I listen to her, that I will put their masks on them first before caring for myself. But you see, she also knows that no matter how much of a super mom I believe I am, that I cannot live without oxygen. And yet every single day we do the same thing. I put your mask on you, and your mask on you, and your mask on you. And I don't care for myself. But you see, we can only give what we have. We give out of who we are. And if I don't care for myself, I certainly cannot care for you. So I'm going to ask you to complete a piece of homework for me. And I'm going to ask that you please do this every single day for the rest of your life. I have big expectations. I'm going to ask that you take 10 minutes just for you. 10 minutes to put your mask on you first. 10 minutes to pray or meditate, to exercise or take a walk. But 10 minutes to care for you first. Take 10.
So I love that video because I think she does such a good job at explaining that we as caregivers, as helping professionals, we do such a good job at taking care of other people, but we tend to put ourselves on the back burner and we tend to forget to put our oxygen mask on first. And as I kind of mentioned in one of the previous slides, is that we are constantly giving pieces of ourselves, of our time and our energy, pieces that we're taking from our own reserves. But sometimes we forget to replenish those reserves and we forget to take care of ourselves so that we can have enough time, energy, empathy to give to the survivors that we care for. So secondary traumatic stress. So secondary traumatic stress is the emotional duress that results when an individual hears about the firsthand trauma experiences of another. So in other words, things that we hear almost on a daily basis, right? We hear about survivor stories, about the awful traumas that they experience every day. And that can start to take a significant toll on the way that we view ourselves and the way that we do our jobs. And I'm going to kind of pick up the pace a little bit going through this. I apologize if I'm going too quickly. I just don't want to run out of time. And so then that leads us into vicarious trauma. So this is a chaotic slide, and I did this intentionally because vicarious trauma can be chaotic. It can feel chaotic inside of us. But it's a combination of symptoms that comprise a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. It can look like a lack of or decreased participation in activities that used to be enjoyable. It could be difficulty managing emotions or being easily distracted, which can increase one's risk of accidents. Relationship problems, avoiding work and interactions with clients or constituents, physical problems or complaints such as aches, pains, and decreased resistance to illnesses. And so this is all a result of not focusing on ourselves, right? Of not being a little selfish and putting our masks on. So with vicarious trauma, there is essentially a model to determine kind of the different ways that people manage vicarious trauma, right? But as you'll notice on this model, that it always results in a change in worldview. So the way that we view our sense of self, the way that we view our sense of safety, and our outlook on life overall. But how we apply that change in worldview can be different depending on how we respond. So if we can respond in a negative way, which can result in vicarious trauma or vicarious traumatization, secondary traumatic stress, and compassion fatigue. We could have a neutral response where we're able to manage it effectively, and it's not really negative, it's not really positive. It just kind of happens, and we're able to process and cope. Or it could also, we could respond in a positive way, right? We could have vicarious resilience. We could have post-traumatic growth. We could have vicarious transformation and compassion satisfaction, where we're able to heal, we're able to grow with this new experience and able to still replenish those reserves that we use and use it to enhance our experiences. So after,
sorry, go ahead.
Was that you, Rochelle?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So here is where we're going to ask you to pay attention to those scores from your burnout survey, because we are the helpers, right? But who helps the helpers, right? Who makes sure that we are okay, right? So we are responsible for making sure that we are okay, right? By practicing good self-care, and self-care is the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. So this can look like taking a break. If you notice that you're starting to get overwhelmed or overworked, have a pause, right? Where you can process what you're going through, give your brain a mental break and not having to feel so overworked. Learning to say no and having good boundaries, talking it out with somebody who is safe to talk it out with, investing in yourself because you are worth investing in, having greater self-awareness, recognizing your body sensations that are associated with stress, right? If you're noticing that you're getting more stress-induced headaches or migraines, if you're noticing that your stomach is always hurting or that you're starting to get heartburn or indigestion more often, recognizing the way that your body is responding to that stress. Or if you're getting tension in your shoulders or in your back, right? And then knowing your limits, right? We, as much as we try to be, are not superheroes. As much as I would love to be a Power Ranger, I just am not, and that's okay. My expectation on myself is that I am myself. I am not a Power Ranger. I'm not Superwoman. I can only take on as much as I am able to take on. And what's important with self-care is I think that people tend to throw around, hashtag self-care, whenever they're eating a bowl of popcorn or drinking a glass of wine or watching a good show. And that's great. Hashtag self-care all you want. But the purpose of self-care is to intentionally choose yourself, right? To intentionally choose to engage in some activity and some practice that replenishes those reserves that you have used throughout the course of your day. And so I hate to be the bearer of bad news, as it usually goes. Whenever I talk about self-care, I usually ruin at least a couple people's days, and I'm just going to say I'm sorry in advance. But if you are choosing, so if any of y'all are advocates or work with sexual assault survivors, if you are going home at the end of your day and binge watching Law and Order Special Victims Unit, because hashtag self-care, you earned binge watching your favorite show, you are not engaging in self-care, because you are coming from a place of working with sexual assault survivors only to go home and watch somebody work with sexual assault survivors. You are still at work. If you are a nursing professional or a healthcare professional and you are going home and you are binge watching Grey's Anatomy or 911 or Cops or whatever emergency show, again, you are not engaging in self-care because you are still at work. Your brain is still associating work with your self-care routine. And so it's important that you're conscious and mindful of those different activities that you are doing. That if you are sitting down with that bowl of popcorn and your glass of wine and you are watching a feel-good show, you are choosing to do it because you've been on your feet all day, and being on the couch and resting is the way that you are choosing yourself, that you are knowing your limits, and that you are taking a break, and that those are the reasons why you are engaging in that particular activity. Another way to think about self-care is in counseling sessions, I often refer to a wellness wheel when I'm talking to clients about self-care and about kind of the ways that they are taking care of themselves. And you can think about the wellness wheel, imagining that you are a car, and each of these little like pie pieces are wheels, right, on your car. And as you're driving down the road, if you're noticing one of these different wheels deflating, your car is not going to drive as efficiently as it should. And so sometimes all of these other pie pieces may be running at 100%, but if you have one that's deflating, it can start to make you drive funny and may need a little extra TLC or attention. So one of those is spiritual. And so it's important to recognize that spiritual wellness does not necessarily mean religion or your religious experiences, though it can, depending on how you take care of yourself and how you find value and meaning. But it's essentially developing a purpose in life, having the ability to spend reflective time alone, taking the time to reflect on the meaning of events in life, having a clear sense of right and wrong and acting accordingly, having the ability to explain why you believe what you believe, caring and acting for the welfare of others in the environment, and being able to practice forgiveness and compassion. And I think it's important to recognize too, is that forgiveness does not necessarily mean that you are forgiving others. Other people are not entitled to your forgiveness. Sometimes that forgiveness is for ourselves. Sometimes we do so much, right? And sometimes we feel like it's not enough, especially in advocacy and social work, because sometimes the resources that we give aren't enough, right? We want to solve the world's problems, but sometimes we can't. And so recognizing that we have earned a little bit of forgiveness for ourselves, because again, we aren't superheroes as much as we would like to be.
All right, so social, this is developing that sense of interaction with those around us. So that's the one way is developing our assertiveness skills. That's not necessarily just standing back and letting everyone else make decisions or being that overbearing person who is aggressive in decision making, but speaking up for yourself and making your voice heard. Making sure that you have an appropriate balance between your social life and your personal life. Having that time for yourself to regroup, rejuvenate, to fill your cup back up, but then also as far as mingling with your friends, with your family, with different relationships that are in your life, those that are mentors, accountability partners. So making sure that you have that appropriate balance to be replenished in all senses there. Another aspect is just to be who you are, be the individual that you were created to be. This isn't adapting and being someone else that you're not. This is about truly embracing who you are, incorporating your beliefs, speaking out about where you stand on things, your thoughts, who you are as an individual, and not conforming to anyone else's expectations. This is also becoming interactive with other people in your community. So if that's people at other volunteer organizations or churches or other opportunities within your own town, then that's another way for you to be social and to make sure that that portion is filled up. Also, diversity, making sure that we are being exposed to a wide variety of individuals and circumstances, and making sure that we're respectful of the different ways that people, thoughts, ideas, and embracing that and opening our own minds to, other thought processes and not just confining ourselves to our own little boxes. This is also making sure that we're putting that time and that energy into maintaining our friendships, our relationships, social networks. So many times we get lost in this work of, we're always working, that we sometimes don't put that time and energy into those lifelong friendships. How many of us have those friendships that we can go months without talking and then pick up 6 months later and it's like we never missed a beat? But in order for those friendships to continue on and to be nourished, we have to put the time and the energy into them. It's like with a plant. In order to make a plant grow, you have to invest into that plant. You have to water it. You have to nurture it. Sometimes you have to give it food. You have to give it sunlight. So all of those things are just as important as to put into your friendships, into your relationships. Make sure that in those relationships, you have boundaries where you're speaking up about how you feel about situations, not just going along with the flow. Conflict is inevitable. So even with some of our closest friends, we can have conflicts and we have different opinions. Make sure that you are appropriately able to talk through those conflicts and to try to see another person's viewpoint on things. The big thing is making sure you're communicating and not just shutting down. Like, that's being social. Remember to have fun. Like, I think that's one of the things that we lose a lot of times in this field, is because of some of the hard things that we hear and some of the interactions. We become bogged down sometimes, and we just forget to laugh and really embrace that belly laughter and doing the things that are fun and make us feel alive. And then lastly, make sure that you have a supportive network of family and friends. They don't necessarily have to understand firsthand the kind of work that you're doing, but you do want people that are going to encourage you to invest into yourself and to take some time for yourself, and recognize when you aren't exactly at the peak of yourself, and to take that opportunity to invest back into yourself and provide, some personal time to rejuvenate there.
Right. The next one is my least favorite, physical. I hate working out, but lucky for me, physical does not necessarily mean that you work out every single day. Physical wellness means that you're eating foods that you enjoy, that you're staying hydrated throughout the day, and listening to your hunger cues. And so this doesn't mean that you are on like that one fad diet and you're juicing 2 weeks out of the month, right? This means that you're listening to your body and being body conscious and recognizing what your body needs at any given time. This means that you're getting adequate sleep, that you are moving your body on a daily basis. You're not, working out like the Hulk every single day, but you are moving your body and getting some type of physical activity in. That you're practicing safe sex with condoms or contraception, whatever that means for your sex life, and communicating openly about sexual needs. Are you making alcohol, nicotine, other drug choices that align with your values? I always tell my clients that alcohol, nicotine, and other drug choices are a coping skill, but sometimes they're a negative coping skill, right? Sometimes we use them with the wrong intentions, and that's what makes it maladaptive. Do you have a habit of regularly washing your hands to prevent cold and flu, and making sure that you're wearing your mask when appropriate, because we are in a COVID world right now, right? And so just being mindful of your body. Occupational. So this is just making sure that you're doing work that you find motivating and interesting, understanding how to balance leisure with work, working in a way that fits into your personal learning style, communicating and collaborating with others, working independently and with others, feeling inspired and challenged, and feeling good at the end of the day about about the work that you accomplished. And if these things aren't meeting your needs, then also feeling empowered to find another area within like the type of field that you do, maybe finding a different workplace that maybe meets your needs more as you need them. Intellectual, so development of good study skills and time management, ability to challenge yourself to see all sides of an issue, becoming a critical thinker, development of your own ideas, views, and opinions, exposing yourself to new ideas, people, and beliefs that are different from your own, becoming aware of who you are and what you value. This doesn't necessarily mean that you're going and applying for your doctorates in applied rocket science. This just means that you're pushing yourself, pushing your intellectual boundaries, watching National Geographic to learn about, underwater, like, I don't know, underwater sea creatures, or learning how to play chess, learning how to speak a different language, or just simply opening up your mindset to learning about somebody's cultural or different cultural perspective, right? And so just pushing your intellectual boundaries and finding out more about the world. Financial. So this is learning how to manage your money and establishing a personal budget and not living beyond your means. So this doesn't mean that you have to make $1 million a year. It just means that you're able to financially sustain yourself without putting yourself in financial debt or putting yourself in debt. This is thinking long term, setting up savings accounts, and learning not to let money be the driving force in your life. Sorry, I know we're running out of time, so I'm trying to hurry. Next is environmental. This is the one that I pay the least attention to, if we are being completely honest. This is being aware of the limits of the Earth's natural resources, conserving energy, so shutting off unused lights. If you have kids, I'm sorry, just your lights are going to stay on forever. Recycling when you can, enjoying and appreciating time outside, kind of enjoying the world around you, not polluting the air, water, earth, and creating home and work environments that are supportive and nurturing. And then last but not least, emotional. So this is having the ability to talk with someone about your emotional concerns and to share your feelings with others. Now, it is important to remember that you're finding a safe space to do this. Our friends and our family members, unfortunately, are not our therapists. And so sometimes when we disclose our emotional concerns with those individuals that we recognize as, friends or family, sometimes that information isn't safe or it's carried with biases, right? And so it's important to find a safe space to be able to talk about these things or to write about these things. It also means saying no when you need to without feeling guilty. You are allowed to have boundaries, and other people, it is their responsibility to respect those boundaries. And sometimes people aren't okay with that, right? Sometimes people feel frustrated or offended at the boundaries that you've set, but that is their responsibility to manage. Feeling content most of the time, feeling good all the time is a very high expectation. And so it's okay to feel content most of the time, right? You don't have to be great every single day. It's okay to only have okay days, and it's okay to have bad days. Feeling you have a strong supportive network, being able to relax, and feeling good about who you are and what you do. So I want everybody to take a minute, okay? And we're gonna practice just taking a deep breath. And when we take this deep breath, I want you to feel your lungs expand to their maximum capacity. And I want you to take 4 seconds to do that. Then we're gonna hold for 4 seconds. And then we're gonna exhale slowly like we're blowing out a candle for 4 seconds, okay? So I want you to go ahead and take your deep breath in and hold and exhale slowly. Now, this is something that you can take with you every single day, anytime you need it, at any point throughout your day. But as you take these deep breaths throughout the course of your day, I want you to remind yourself that you are choosing to take this breath for yourself, to take care of yourself, to re-regulate your body, and to make sure that you are in a safe and healthy space, focusing on the way that your body is reacting and focusing on your own self-care. Now, we only have 3 minutes left, so I don't think that we're gonna get through this wave breathing exercise, but if you'd like a copy of it, feel free to reach out via email. I think we have until 1 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and I can share this with you. Just reach out via email. I'll share our email right here. And feel free to reach out if you would like that exercise, but it's a great guided, kind of guided breathing exercise. And if y'all have any questions, I know we only have 3 minutes, but we'd be happy to take them right now.
I will say that there are a lot of the things that Caitlin spoke about. This is her jam because this is what she does every day, all day. And she really invests into our team as a forensic nurses, forensic interviewers. And she literally does these breathing exercises with us, like helps us, like we do wiggly noodle like dances to release stress. Some of the activities are not always like seen favorable by everybody, but they are a lot of fun and very useful in being able to do stress relief, and also to be able to implement with our patients and to be able to help them when they're in crisis mode. So you know, a lot of the things that Caitlin has mentioned as far as breathing techniques and different strategies are really helpful in our daily practice, and have really made significant contributions for us as far as the staff of TXF&E, and also for many of our patients. So please, I hope that this was beneficial, that you are taking the opportunity to invest back into yourself because you deserve it and you are worth it. And in order for us to continue caring for our patients and our victims, we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves first. And Caitlin and I just, we're both really passionate about investing back into yourselves and making sure that you have the resources that you need. And we were really enthused that we had the opportunity to share this presentation with y'all today.